everyone, Nadeem here with PC.Solutions.Net. So today we're going to discuss the top 10 ways most organizations get breached. Now, this information is from NSA and CISA. Everybody knows what NSA means, but CISA is the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Here are some of the main ways. Let's just jump into that and go ahead and subscribe if you like the video, share it with everybody you know. Hopefully somebody can take advantage of this and secure their organization. So number one, default configuration of software and applications. Many breaches occur because some device or software was deployed and the default admin password was not changed. Now, this happens with just software by itself, which more and more companies are changing that, where during installation, the system will ask for an admin password. However, there are still so many devices out there that have default passwords in them, from switches to security cameras, doorbells, all kinds of stuff. That has default passwords in there. Whenever setting up new software or a device, be absolutely sure that you change all the default passwords for any usernames. Number two, improper separation of user and administrative privileges. Admins should be separated from day-to-day user accounts to prevent unauthorized access. I preach this, everybody here preaches it. But still, when we onboard some customers, we see that there's a user that has admin privileges, and the thing is that, I need to be admin because blah, 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 whatever reason. They don't understand that they need to have a separate admin account to do administrative stuff, and then a separate user account with limited privileges just to do the day-to-day operations. There's so many breaches that happen because your user account that you're using has admin level access to the domain or the network, and when a breach occurs, boom, the bad guys have access to everything. So be mindful of separation of user accounts from administrative accounts. The next one is insufficient internal network monitoring. So you need to be absolutely confident that you are monitoring both internal and external criteria on a network. So by internal, it could be the event logs of workstations, servers, switches, routers, firewalls, whatever have you. And then there might be some external things, like you might have some sort of an intrusion prevention system around the boundary of your network, getting input from external sources. You want to make sure that you are monitoring that. And there are so many attacks that happen, and the bad guys have just been trying brute force attack, and nobody was monitoring anything. Nobody knew what was happening. So until it was too late, and then eventually the bad guys end up breaking in, and then everybody's scratching their heads, how did this happen? Happens all the time. So be cautious to when designing your monitoring, that you are monitoring the right things. One thing I want to mention on monitoring is you want to minimize noise when monitoring. I've seen this in quite a few networks when we onboard users and customers. So what's happening is the monitoring system generates a lot of noise. So the admins, they get used to that noise. So when a real issue happens, they're like, oh yeah, that alert happens all the time. No big deal, when it was an actual alert. Number four is lack of network segmentation. So pretty much any enterprise grade switch out there has what are called VLANs. These are virtual local area networks. So within one physical switch, you can have multiple virtual networks. And you want to have these separation of networks for security and for performance. So it's a double whammy here. When you separate out this traffic, each VLAN can carry a certain amount of max bandwidth. So you are actually maximizing the amount of performance you can get out of that switch. Separate these networks out. So you might want to have a separate network for your wireless devices. You might want to have a separate network for printers, separate network for your phones, separate network for your servers, separate network for your workstations. However you design it, you want to have that separation and segmentation of your network. Number 5, breaches happen most commonly because of poor patch management. And in this day and age, you'll be amazed how many customers we onboard and they don't have a formal system for patch management in place. It shouldn't happen, but it does happen. We see it a lot of times. Vulnerabilities should be patched promptly to prevent breaches. There was an example I give. It was a large solar turbine manufacturer, and their network admin one time decided that he was going to stop implementing patches because sometimes patches break things. Yeah, the outcome was the company got breached, the IT admin was fired. I mean, all kinds of bad things happened. And the lesson was, yeah, patch management might break some things. It shouldn't if you follow best practices. But even if it does, I'd rather it break something and you be secure as opposed to data getting into the hands of bad guys. Breach is the last thing that you want. Number 6 is bypass of system access control. So attackers can gain access by using stolen login hashes. I've talked to many network admins in different companies, and I've encountered those network admins that say, oh yeah, we are very secure. We use this hardware key and the login hash is stored on this hardware key and nobody can break into our network because blah, 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 whatever, you get the idea. Well, the issue happens is when these keys were generated, the machines these keys were generated from was already compromised. So the bad guys had access to the login hashes that was sitting on this hardware device. It's a USB key that you plug into USB and it logs you into the system. So all of a sudden the network admins are thinking, oh, we are super duper secure, when the bad guys are just coming and going as they please through the back door. And they have full access to all the systems because the login hash, which is what generates the token to log in, was already compromised, was already stolen. So the bad guys can just log in without anything checking for their credentials. Number 7 is weak or misconfigured MFA authentication method. So everybody thinks, kind of like going hand in hand with the bypass of system access control, the login hashes on these USB keys. MFA is something similar. It's a second factor or a multi-factor authentication. So you have additional factors of authentication. And if you don't configure these properly, the bad guys can very easily get access to the MFA, whether they're PIN codes or tokens. So for example, I know a lot of companies still use sending the PIN code for MFA via SMS text message. Don't do it. It's already compromised. It's very easy to bypass that. Even authentication using, for example, the Microsoft Authenticator app can be compromised by the bad guys unless it's configured properly. So MFA methods should be secure and properly configured to prevent unauthorized access. If you don't know how your MFA is configured, maybe you need to check with your IT admins what process they use to configure your MFA. Number 8 on the list is insufficient access control list on network shares. So basically, when you create a network share, you give everybody full access. I've seen this. You've probably encountered this. People should have the least amount of access they need to get their work done. No more. People should have the least amount of access they need to get their work done. That's it. In a lot of networks that, when we are onboarding customers and users, we see that, certain shares are fully open with full access to anybody on the network, which means that not only can even the good guys change permissions on files, so they can basically take away permissions from certain other people, But the bad guys have full access to everything. If one compromise occurs on one account, since everybody has full access, they can do whatever they want. So make sure that you operate your network on a least privilege basis. So give people the least amount of access they need to get their job done. Next thing, number 9, is poor credential hygiene. So passwords should be complex, they should be unique, and never stored in plain text. Now, I've heard this from IT admins as well. Oh yeah, we deployed this password utility to manage passwords, which password management tools are great. But there's also the other thing that happens with password management tools, especially when deployed in an enterprise, is if that tool gets compromised, the bad guys have access to the kingdom, which has happened. Password management tools have been compromised. All you need to do is search for it, and you'll know which tools were compromised recently. When that happens, and of course, these tools are prime targets for the bad guys because they hold the keys to the kingdom. So I'm not saying don't use password management tools. Use password management tools, but just make sure that your passwords are complex, unique, and not stored in plain text. And what's even better is if you can rotate your passwords, right? So there are tools and utilities out there that you can use, like we use it for our customers, where as soon as you use a password, that password is no longer good anymore. Once it's used, it rotates, and then you have to go to the system to get the next password if you want to log in again. Number 10 on the list is unrestricted code execution. So this is pretty much, Windows has had this option built in for a long time, I think since Windows XP days. Untrusted software should not be allowed to run on the network. You should only allow known trusted software to run. And that right there will make you so many times more secure than the level you are at right now. Only allow specific apps to be able to run. And that way, even if somebody does click somewhere or install some application, it just simply will not be able to run on your network. And that's going to catapult your security, and you're going to be so far ahead of everybody else. So if you've enjoyed this video, go ahead and subscribe, tell your friends. And these 10 things are what are causing breaches right now. And if you just secure these 10 different things, take these 10 steps, you'll be so far ahead of everybody else. You will not be as big of a target for the bad guys, because what the bad guys do is they peel a few layers of security, and when they see, oh, there's more layers here, I can't get access, they're going to go to an easier target, which hopefully is a competitor of yours. So until next time, everybody, have a great day and be safe.